people come forward and say that there was a lot of suspicious activity going on in the World Trade Center for weeks before 9/11. That they heard a lot of stuff going on the vacant floors above and below them. Also, the World Trade Center, for the first time in history, was closed completely for several weekends before 9/11. And no one was allowed in there except the special security forces. And by the way, the security for the World Trade Center was under the direction of Marvin Bush, President's brother. Larry Silverstein made $3.5 billion off this. I'm sure he could afford to buy a few people off. I don't know what it will take. I mean, it was only on his deathbed 40 years later that E. Howard Hunt made a deathbed confession and said that he was one of the bums on the grassy knoll and he was part of a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy. I don't know how long we'll have to wait for that kind of a thing. All we can do is operate with the facts that we have, and we have not all the facts, but we have plenty to get a new investigation going. The commission never asked any of the people. They never asked Marvin Bush who was working in that building, who had access to that building on those weekends. They never asked Cheney or anybody who was that young officer that asked you if the order still stands. Nobody had ever asked that young officer what he meant by that. Was it a stand-down order or what? I mean, I don't have a conspiracy theory. I don't know how it happened. I don't even believe the government's conspiracy theory. But I think I do know enough that I want a new investigation because we still don't know the truth. And that's what I believe. I don't know if it was a controlled demolition. Maybe there was something else. I'm awfully sure it was not just the impact of those airplanes and the little kerosene fire that took down those buildings. I'm enough of an engineer and physicist, and when I see the top of the building start to topple, I expect it to continue and fall off. Conservation of angular momentum. But all of a sudden, it stopped tipping and just pulverized and came straight. I don't understand what happened, but I'd like to.
I think that's a reasonable request.
Okay.
The DVDs are
in the back.
The DVDs are out there. The DC 911 Truth has 4 911 DVDs on it, and this paperwork here is take the 911 quiz, and even this shed light, including where he was just talking about the top of one of the buildings started going like this. Should have just slid off.
I've always wondered why the thing didn't just tip over.
Right, that's one of the questions on this, so please make sure you get one of these.
And I can't answer it. I don't know why it didn't. You know, there's all sorts of people out there with crazy theories. Some people say, oh, it was zapped with beam weapons from space, or, you know, there were nuclear weapons in there. Or I don't know, but I'd like to know. Yes?
Can you explain to us, I think I understand a little bit of what Presidential Security Directive 51 is. Can you explain to the rest of us what it is and the other directive that you mentioned?
Well, when you take those presidential directives in sum, what they amount to is based on an act of terrorism or a natural disaster like a hurricane or an earthquake or whatever he determines to be an unusual event, the president now, according to that law, which I don't think is valid, but that's another point, according to these presidential directives and the laws that Congress has passed, he can declare martial law. He can essentially become a dictator. He can dissolve Congress. He can take all power to himself, and those who pull his strings, of course. So, I don't think he has the power to make those kinds of directives. they violate the Constitution. I don't think that Congress, in passing laws giving him the power to declare martial law, I don't think those things are valid. They have a whole series of things on continuity of government. And they all violate the Constitution. Congress does not have the authority under the Constitution to give away our civil rights. They don't have the constitutional authority to allow the president to strip us of our rights under the Bill of Rights. To take away our rights, to amend the Constitution, they have to pass an amendment and get the states to ratify it. They haven't done that, and of course can't do that. So all of these presidential directives and these martial law laws and all that, I think are invalid because they're unconstitutional on their face. But on the other hand, we now have a Supreme Court which by 5-4 votes in favor of the imperial presidency and corporate power and votes against the rights of the people as enshrined in the Constitution. So we're sort of in trouble. And we need to replace Congress with a People's Congress who will assert their authority because they are the decision makers under the Constitution and will tell the president what he can and can't do and stand up for us and our rights. And any member of Congress that won't do that, we should just summarily get rid of them and tell them why. And if we have to do it one congressional district at